Welcome to our field hearing on federal efforts to improve cybersecurity held by the Subcommittee on Information Technology of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. We're pleased to be here in Chicago, Illinois, and I thank all of our participants and panelists for their attendance today. I'd like to start the hearing off by recognizing my friend, my colleague, the distinguished gentlewoman from the great state of Illinois, and the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Information Technology, Ms. Robin Kelly, for her opening remarks.
And thank you, Chairman Hurd, and welcome to the beautiful city of Chicago. Glad you got here through the traffic. And thank you to our witnesses for taking the time to testify here this morning. In the past 2 years, the public and private sectors have faced serious challenges to keeping their networks and systems secure from cyber thieves. In that time frame, sophisticated companies like Anthem, Sony Pictures, Target, and Home Depot all reported being victims of cyber attacks. Last year's data breach at the Office of Personnel Management similarly highlighted the challenges the federal government faces in securing its systems from cyber spies. And just last week, we learned that hackers had gained access to the Democratic National Committee's networks. These attacks made clear that no business or sector of the economy is immune from sophisticated adversaries. In response to the rising frequency of large-scale cyber attacks, both Congress and the administration have taken a number of steps to address this issue. This past December, Congress passed and President Obama signed into law the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015. With this landmark legislation, the private sector and federal government will now have a more effective framework for sharing cybersecurity information to better respond to cyber threats. More recently, the President released his Cybersecurity National Action Plan, more commonly known as CSNAP, for the country. A critical component of CSNAP is the establishment of a new commission that is tasked with providing the President with recommendations on actions the country should take over the next decade to strengthen cybersecurity in both the public and private sectors. These federal efforts will have great potential for improving the state of the nation's cybersecurity, but only if the federal government and private sector work together, and that's why we're here today. We're holding today's congressional field briefing in Chicago to hear your views on how our cyber laws and regulations have been working. Professor Santos from Illinois Tech works on groundbreaking innovations in numerous fields, and you are widely viewed as a leading academic expert in the field of computer science and cybersecurity. Mr. Horn is from Advocate Healthcare, the largest healthcare provider in Illinois. Ms. Hatter is from Intel, one of the largest semiconductor chip makers in the world. Mr. Carano is from Chicago First, which protects the infrastructure of the financial institutions in the second largest financial hub in the country. We're interested in hearing about the challenges to cybersecurity and what you believe the federal government can do to help you keep sensitive data and networks safe. I want to thank our witnesses again for their testimony today. Government and the private sector need to work together on cybersecurity. I look forward to heading back to Washington with a better picture of what works and what doesn't work and where we need to improve. Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Good morning. Again, I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm thrilled to be here in Chicago with my friend and the ranking member of our subcommittee for this field briefing. The IT Subcommittee is a new subcommittee on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. So far this Congress, we've held hearings on encryption, drones, the state of cloud computing in the federal government, health IT interoperability, interoperability between the VA and DoD's electronic health systems, the census, the OPM breach, and a host of others. We have strived to establish a tone and a culture of bipartisanship on this subcommittee. In September of last year, Ranking Member Kelly joined me in my hometown of San Antonio for a field briefing similar to the one we are holding here today. We heard from private sector and government witnesses about ways to leverage the power of the cloud to save taxpayer money, decrease waste, and increase security. I was able to show Ranking Member Kelly my hometown and district and introduce her to some of the folks that I have an honor of representing. There is no substitute for getting outside of our comfort zones and walking around in someone else's world for a day. Ranking Member Kelly, I'm honored to be with you and the rest of my colleagues here in the great city of Chicago. Last year, Congress enacted the Cybersecurity Act of 2015. It created a voluntary cybersecurity information sharing process that encourages both public and private sector entities to share threat information. The Department of Homeland Security and other government organizations have been working tirelessly to implement the law and improve our cyber posture. Last Wednesday marked a major implementation deadline when final policies and procedures were due from DHS and DOJ on submitting cyber threat indicators to the government. Also due were final guidelines on protecting privacy and civil liberties. In addition to Congress's information sharing bill, in February of this year, President Obama released a Cybersecurity National Action Plan, also known as the CNAP. One key piece of CNAP is the creation of the Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity. The Commission is tasked with making recommendations on steps we can take over the next decade to improve national cybersecurity, and the Commission's work is ongoing. I'm pleased to see that Congress and this administration recognize the importance of allocating proper resources to cybersecurity and protecting our digital infrastructure. It is vital that both the public and private sector collaborate on these issues because we are all at risk. This briefing will provide private sector experts who deal in cybersecurity on a daily basis the opportunity to provide feedback on these efforts to improve cybersecurity in the federal government. For example, how much of a benefit does this information sharing framework really provide for national cybersecurity? How can we encourage maximum cooperation and participation from both sectors? We can take back what we learned in this field today, the reality of cybersecurity in America, in order to inform future policy decisions. Ultimately, the goal is to leverage technology to our benefit, to save taxpayers money, to secure data, to enable commerce and support innovation, and to help people realize the American dream. We can achieve this the way we have always achieved anything of note, by working together. I thank the witnesses for joining us here today, and I look forward to y'all's testimony. I'd like to now recognize the panelists for today's briefing. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Eunice Santos, Chair of the Department of Computer Science at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Thanks for being here today. Mr. Michael Carano, Executive Director of Chicago First. Mr. Gary Horn, Vice President of Technical Services and Chief Technology Officer at Advocate Healthcare. And Ms. Patty Hatter, Vice President of Intel Security Group and General Manager of Intel Security Professional Services. Welcome to you all, and I look forward to a robust discussion today. In order to allow ample time for discussion, I'm hoping that y'all can limit your testimony to 5 minutes. We'll have the clock running. When it gets to yellow, I believe you have a minute left, and then when it starts blinking red, if you can close your remarks. And with that being said, I think we're going to start with you, Dr. Santos, for your opening remarks, and you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Kelly, and distinguished members, I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony to the subcommittee at today's field hearing. By way of background, I'm the Ron Hochsprung Endowed Chair and Professor, and also the Department Chair of Computer Science at Illinois Institute of Technology, also known as Illinois Tech. My work includes parallel and distributed processing, cybersecurity, and complex systems modeling. I was also a senior research fellow at the U.S. Department of Defense's Center for Technology and National Security Policy. Illinois Tech is a private research university with a technology focus. It is designated as a National Center of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security. My testimony will focus on 3 items. 1, threats faced by educational institutions in protecting against data breaches. 2, the role of higher education institutions in developing the cybersecurity workforce of the future. And 3, research-informed considerations that can help the federal government in its efforts to effectively address cybersecurity. Institutions of higher education face a wide variety of cyber threats. At Illinois Tech, cyber attacks occur constantly, and it has deployed the majority of currently available industry tools. Unfortunately, threats are ever evolving with new attack methods developed every day. The committee should be aware of some unique aspects of nonprofit and higher education institutions, including the need to have an open technology environment to support their academic mission and the needs of students and faculty. Research universities must support their investigators' often unique technology configuration requests in order to advance their scientific efforts, and will host extensive research and information databases, including highly sensitive research information that may include human subjects information and high-value intellectual property. Universities also must support potentially tens of thousands of users in a BYOD, bring your own device environment. This leads to extensive user autonomy and comes with increased risk of malware, ransomware, and the like. Also, most universities must have international connections, often ruling out use of geolocation blocking. So, staffing, monitoring, and other support can be more complex than those for corporations that have more ability to create a top-down unified IT structure. It also necessitates a defensive approach that prioritizes protection of the most sensitive data and systems. Developing university-specific repositories that collect information in a systematic manner on the events and lessons learned in managing these threats would provide us substantial knowledge that can be used in case studies, education, and training. However, cross-sharing of such information among universities presents challenges, including how to exchange specific institutional information and, of course, how to maintain privacy protections. Illinois Tech is at the forefront of cybersecurity education, training, and research. In the Department of Computer Science, undergraduate and graduate students are offered coursework on the issues and advances in cybersecurity, including encryption systems, infrastructure protection, database and network security, malware detection and defense, and other cutting-edge topics. Furthermore, the department provides opportunities to work on research with faculty who specialize in critical areas such as forensic linguistics, cyber trust and suspicion, and trustworthy cyber-physical critical infrastructure. The Information and Technology Management Program also offers education in cyber forensics and network security and is supported by the Cyber Forensic Security Laboratory. Illinois Tech has also established the Center for Cybersecurity and Forensics Education named C2 Safe. Our computer science students are in high demand and work in a variety of sectors: tech, health, finance, research, entertainment, education, government, and many others. With the ubiquitous of technology, sectors that do not need to actively and seriously consider effective cybersecurity methods are very few and far between. Lastly, the federal government has stepped up to address the challenge of cybersecurity. One area in which I would like to encourage greater focus is in understanding the social and organizational dimensions of threats, in particular, how human beings knowingly or unknowingly compromise security and what can be done about that. I believe that more research in this area can produce dividends in terms of better understanding how individuals respond in the cyber world to inputs that can compromise security. For example, improving understanding of what are major drivers for why certain individuals may be unduly influenced or inappropriately trust cyber communication requests rather than becoming suspicious, and what are the environmental or cultural issues within an organization that can allow certain issues to flourish. By better understanding these aspects of human behavior, we can develop improved public education, employee training approaches, and refine procedures and policies to produce improved outcomes and mitigate risks. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Santos. Now, Mr. Michael Carano, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Kelly, and distinguished members of the committee, on behalf of Chicago First members, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to discuss federal efforts to improve cybersecurity. Chicago First provides a collaborative forum for financial and critical infrastructure firms to promote individual and collective emergency preparedness and resiliency through local, regional, and national public-private partnerships. Our meetings and work groups focus on business continuity planning, cybersecurity, physical security, and life safety. Chicago First Cybersecurity Work Group developed a consensus view of the local cybersecurity landscape for this testimony, which focuses on 5 areas: education, data sharing, cross-sector coordination, cybersecurity frameworks, and information privacy. Regarding public education, Chicago First members believe new, high-profile public education campaigns are vital in the ongoing effort to combat cybercrime because people of all ages use network computers. With the proliferation of remote access to corporate systems as more employees work remotely, the security of home networks and computers is becoming more important to overall national security. A framework for minimum cyber education requirements with consistent cybersecurity terminology and definitions may be useful to provide guidance to various age groups based on the technology they are most likely to use. Regarding professional education, cybersecurity leaders are deeply concerned about the availability of competent candidates to fill the growing number of information security roles at private sector firms. We support efforts to further develop cyber curriculums at higher education institutions and to promote the field of study with qualified students and individuals seeking a career change. Regarding data sharing, the financial services sector discovers new cyber threats on a daily basis and shares this threat intelligence through a variety of channels, including the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. FSISAC members can report problems anonymously for the benefit of other members, which reduces any reputational, legal, or financial risk that might occur with a disclosure, while allowing for immediate mitigation steps by other firms. We support the anonymous sharing of information with the government for this reason. Private sector firms collect a vast amount of threat and vulnerability data. The lack of tools to produce actionable information from this data may be an opportunity for a public-private research effort on how critical infrastructure institutions can better correlate cyber threat data to their environments and improve the speed of response and remediation efforts. Regarding cross-sector coordination, the financial services sector has worked with the energy and communications sectors to share information and identify vulnerabilities and restoration priorities for major events. Looking forward, cross-sector planning and response coordination is increasingly vital because multiple critical infrastructure sectors are often deeply interconnected at the regional level. We must not plan in silos. Regarding cybersecurity frameworks, while larger institutions have embraced the NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity, some community banks have found the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council's cybersecurity assessment tool to be a more straightforward means for assessing their environments. Maintaining assessments under multiple frameworks to meet often divergent requirements of state, federal, and international regulators is not sustainable given the cybersecurity human resource constraints. Harmonization and alignment of the assessment frameworks is a possible solution to reducing the regulatory burden while maintaining confidence that institutions are taking prudent steps to mitigate cyber risks. Recent FFIEC regulatory guidance has emphasized the assessment of key vendors and business partners for cyber risk. Financial service providers, insurance companies, and financial utilities are facing a burden of answering these free-form inquiries in increasing numbers as more firms respond to the guidance to assess their vendors. Conversely, individual firms are grappling with how to effectively assess their vendors, which could numbers in the hundreds for larger institutions. In working with regulators, financial institutions need options for compliance based on the scale and risk profile of their institution and commonly accepted risk reports. Regarding information privacy, Chicago First members expressed support for the de-emphasis of Social Security numbers as a personal identifier. Banks remain concerned about synthetic identity theft fraud using Social Security numbers of minors. The Social Security Administration has no validation structure that includes birthday, so this type of identity fraud can be difficult to detect. Non-public personal information breach response continues to be challenging as a result of the 47 divergent state and territorial data breach response requirements. We support continuing efforts to define a national standard for breach response that balances consumer protections with efficient notification. In conclusion, Chicago First members support government efforts to improve our nation's cybersecurity through the Cybersecurity National Action Plan and the Cybersecurity Act of 2015, and we look forward to continue to work with all of our government partners to enhance our nation's cybersecurity resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Horn, you're now recognized for your opening statement for 5 minutes.
Chairman Hurd, Ranking Member Kelly, and distinguished members, thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee today. Advocate, a not-for-profit mission-based health system, is the largest health system in Illinois and one of the largest healthcare providers in the Midwest. Advocate operates more than 350 sites of care, including 12 hospitals that encompass 11 acute care hospitals, one of the area's largest home health care companies, and one of the region's largest medical groups. Advocate is proud to be a national leader in innovative payment and care delivery systems, and we continually seek to enhance and expand such efforts to the benefit of more patients and communities. We have established one of the largest accountable care organizations in the country, which includes a commercial insurance contract, a Medicare shared savings program, and a Medicaid accountable care entity. As the nation's healthcare systems adopt new delivery system reform initiatives, we are eager to share our experiences and knowledge with the U.S. Congress to the benefit of providers and patients across the country. My testimony today will focus on cybersecurity and its importance in providing seamless data accessibility while providing a safe environment for the patients we serve. Advocate, on a monthly basis, mitigates an average of 59,950 endpoint threats and 200 advanced malware threats. With a daily internet usage of over 3.6 terabytes, over 120,000 known phishing, fraudulent, or spyware websites are blocked. Additionally, Advocate receives over 50,000 inbound requests per hour from over 100 foreign countries in which we do not have a presence. Advocate has made significant investments in cybersecurity operations. Since 2013, over $17 million in capital with an associated annual operating expense minus salaries of $6.3 million has been dedicated to this purpose. It is expected that the investment and associated costs will continue to increase to stay ahead of the bad actors. Earlier this year, the Cybersecurity National Action Plan was introduced. Overall, I applaud the plan. However, it does little to enhance privacy or public safety, nor does it provide a concise plan around the overarching cybersecurity ecosystem. Establishing cybersecurity public awareness campaigns and a federal chief information security officer are a positive step, but it is unclear if the CISO will play a significant role in developing cybersecurity programs, and it is imperative that the CISO has the opportunity to be an agent for change. Federal information technology does indeed need modernization. However, it can't focus solely on cybersecurity. It needs to address the requirements of the business community and not impede private enterprise. To address the severe shortage of professionals with cybersecurity skills, the development of a fully comprehensive strategy around training and education is needed, as much as a well-designed core curriculum, which is critical to successfully and quickly addressing the issue. As a nation, we must bolster the security of our cybersecurity ecosystem, not just place a burden on individual institutions. The bad actors target all sectors and include foreign and domestic criminals, as well as nation states. The Cybersecurity Act of 2015 took important steps to improve our cybersecurity defenses, which are just now being implemented. The Act promotes information sharing across public and private sectors and also contains specific provisions related to healthcare. An example is the creation of the recently formed Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity Task Force, which is charged with better understanding the needs of the healthcare field and identifying helpful resources. The Act also directs federal agencies to establish, in coordination with the private sector, voluntary, consensus-based guidelines and best practices that are consistent with existing requirements. These resources will be tremendously helpful to healthcare systems such as Advocate, but also must address the needs of small hospitals and individual practitioners. Given that the information is shared across healthcare organizations, even the smallest provider must be secure. To provide the most benefit, the guidelines need to be actionable and specific. While these steps are critically important, we also need to ensure that the federal government is doing everything it can to identify, disrupt, and apprehend the bad actors. An area of particular concern are the Office of Civil Rights and Health and Human Services policy around cybersecurity incidents. Healthcare takes cybersecurity seriously and invests heavily in the cybersecurity ecosystem to prevent bad actors from compromising their network environments. However, there is never a guarantee that a cyber incident cannot occur. When an incident does occur, the reporting entity is viewed as negligent or incompetent rather than a victim of a crime and a stiff penalty levied. Because healthcare is being asked to both reduce costs and improve its cybersecurity measures, it would be in the public interest that rather than a monetary fine, those dollars be applied to that entity's cybersecurity ecosystem, potentially under the guidance of the Cybersecurity Act of 2015, allowing it to swiftly and effectively address the cause of the incident and enhance its cybersecurity profile. In closing, the importance of all aspects of cybersecurity are front and center at Advocate and is part of the corporate culture. At stake is the patients we serve, the trust of the community, and the integrity of our business relationships. It is well understood that no matter the size of the investment and the breadth of the solution, the risk of an attack is always present. Advocate is committed to ensuring cybersecurity remains a top priority. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. And Ms. Hatter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Hurd and Ranking Member Kelly, for the opportunity. I'm Patty Hatter, Vice President and General Manager for Intel Security Professional Services. And prior to taking this role, I was also our CIO for the past 4 years at Intel Security, so I know how hard it is to keep organizations safe. So my testimony will focus on Intel's approaches for an increasingly interconnected threat landscape, as well as aspects of the CNAP that we hope will strengthen existing public and private partnerships and enhance our national cybersecurity posture. Over the past decade, attackers have evolved from recreational hackers with limited capabilities to organized crime and state-sponsored actors commanding dedicated resources and highly skilled personnel. Attackers are also busy developing new techniques that are substantially more difficult to detect and prevent, setting their sights beyond the operating system and focusing on underlying virtual machines, firmware, and hardware. The growing sophistication of their tools and methods of attack have unsurprisingly placed a tremendous amount of pressure on today's security technologies, processes, and people. It is imperative that individuals and organizations across the spectrum work together to share the responsibility to protect and defend U.S. networks and digital infrastructure. As a result, the mutual, non-regulatory partnerships that have grown between public and private sector entities over the past 2 decades are even more important than ever. Intel has been active in many of these partnership initiatives for more than 10 years, providing hardware, software, and expertise to advance the rapid adoption of secure technologies around the country. The challenge is never ending, but we have no doubt that the public and private partnership model will continue to protect and serve our national interests well into the future. Intel believes that good security is a result of strategic and generous investments in a three-legged stool of technology, process, and people. Weakness in any of these 3 legs will quickly undermine an organization's ability to protect itself in today's threat environment. Accompanied by the 35% increase in federal cyber budgets, the President's Cybersecurity National Action Plan encourages deeper public-private partnerships and represents a substantial investment in all 3 legs of the stool. As such, we support and applaud the CNAP, but also urge additional investments to better bolster the cyber workforce and support under-resourced governments at the state and local level. Specifically, we applaud the $19 billion investment in federal cybersecurity budgets and the $3.1 billion Information Technology Modernization Fund to retire and replace many aging federal IT systems. Updating the federal cybersecurity R&D strategic plan and encouraging government and industry to jointly test and certify network devices within the Internet of Things are also key aspects of CNAP's investments in the technology leg of the stool. We similarly commend the creation of federal capabilities like the National Center for Cybersecurity Resilience and the administration's commitment to developing and implementing international cyber norms as part of CNAP's investment in the process leg of the stool. In particular, we're committed to supporting the National Cybersecurity Alliance and widespread adoption of multi-factor authentication technologies. Intel further applauds the establishment of the Council of Federal Privacy Officers, which is a recognition of the key concept that privacy is vital to a strong security. Of particular interest to Intel Security, however, is the people leg of the stool. Noticeably, CNAP takes important steps to reverse the cyber talent shortage with the inclusion of a $62 million federal budget increase to bolster cybersecurity personnel programs, but there is much more to do. With over 209,000 cybersecurity jobs in the U.S. unfilled last year and predictions of 1.5 million more cyber jobs than takers by 2019, Intel urges the government to consider establishing a Cyber National Guard. By offering young STEM graduates immediate employment protecting federal and other critical assets, the government could quickly produce a trained workforce with practical experience and valuable security clearances. After serving their country for 5 years, these individuals would find private companies like Intel eager to hire them and pay them what they're worth. Finally, Intel believes that government is most helpful when it leads by example, convenes key stakeholders, and adequately invests in infrastructure. Through the President's Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity, the CNAP created a useful venue for industry leaders and experts to continue their engagement in these matters. As it prepares to issue its first report in December, we urge the Commission to keep the following principles in mind. First, assess existing collaborative work before making new recommendations. More than another strategy document, policymakers need a clear roadmap for strategy execution and deliverables. 2, reinforce the consensus around voluntary, non-regulatory, public-private partnerships and best practices to support initiatives like real-time information sharing and global standard setting. 3, prioritize paying down the cyber debt and reversing the current talent shortage. 4, recommend additional incentives and government models to drive uniform federal cybersecurity management and interoperable solutions. And lastly, invest in additional broadband to grow the network of IP-enabled devices and systems that make up the Internet of Things and industrial internet, and plan that out over a broad 10-year time horizon. I'd like to once again thank the distinguished panel for giving me the opportunity to discuss the aspects of CNAP that we hope will strengthen the existing public-private partnerships and enhance our national cybersecurity posture. While much progress has been made, more needs to be done, particularly in those areas of closing the cyber skills gap nationwide and improving cybersecurity at the state and local level. Paying down the cybersecurity debt will require both industry and government to step up and make hard choices, but we look forward to our continuing engagement on these matters through our involvement in public-private partnerships and investment in process, people, and technology.
Thank you, Ms. Hatter. I'd like to now recognize Ms. Kelly for her first round of questions for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for everything you've shared with us today. As many of you have talked about the President's Cybersecurity National Action Plan, and a part of that plan was establishing a new commission that is tasked with making recommendations for improving cybersecurity in the private and public sectors. This commission, known as the Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity, is scheduled to report its findings and recommendations to the President before the end of the year. As leaders in each of your respective fields, it would be helpful to hear from you about what the commission should examine to strengthen the nation's cybersecurity. And you've all talked about it again, but I know you were rushing through your 5 minutes, so we can go a little slower this time. Mr. Horn, what are the main challenges to the healthcare industry's cybersecurity? What do you see as the main challenges?
First of all, the main challenge, quite frankly, is cost. The cost to keep the environment safe, to keep it safe for our patients and our business partners, anybody who engages with us, is significant. We're being asked more and more to cut costs to make healthcare affordable, and we are spending a significant amount of money, and we'll have to spend a lot more money over the next 5 to 10 years to ensure that we stay safe. So certainly cost is number one, and number two, if I may, is just the educational problem that we face as well. We have been unable to find and fill cybersecurity positions. We've had positions posted for probably 9 months at this point, and to find qualified, experienced personnel is very, very difficult to do at this point.
I can tell you that my staff and I hear that constantly, not just from cybersecurity, but technology, period, across my district from many of our industries. What are some of the positive steps that you feel Advocate Healthcare has taken on this issue and that you believe the industry as a whole could benefit from if we adopt some steps you've taken?
Part of it is the multi-tiered security infrastructure that we've developed. I think that, again, that investment has gone a long way to ensure the safety of the infrastructure. So I think that's number one. I think there are a lot of peer organizations that feel that dealing only with perimeter security is the solution to the problem. What we're finding, and it's certainly no secret, that most of the threat comes from inside at this point. And really, that's where our investment has been. That's the first. The second is to ensure that really the area of advanced persistent threat is really taken very critically. In other words, what is already in the network? And what we're saying is always assume breach. We operate with that profile, assume breach, and always monitor the network for any sort of anomalies that go on. I think that's probably first and foremost. I think it's a fool's game to just pretend that a little bit of virus protection, malware protection, and some firewalls are going to protect the organization from the bad actors. The reality is you have to be looking deep, deep into the infrastructure constantly, 24/7, 365, with qualified people to ensure that we don't actually have some sort of an incident occur.
And if you could make 2 recommendations to the commission, what would they be?
I think number one would be to step up the rate of education, as we've talked about earlier. I think that getting a very solid, very well-defined program, and actually some sort of a very well-structured maybe underwritten education program in play is probably first and foremost. The second really is much stronger apprehension of the perpetrators themselves. The bad actors, in many cases, are not heavily disciplined. As a society, it almost seems in some cases that we almost accept those actions. It's become back page news at this point. It's really being much more aggressive in the apprehension of the bad actors themselves.
And am I going to ask, how much money would you say the advocate is spending on the whole cybersecurity issue?
So again, it's about
Approximately.
Yeah, so we've invested so far over the past 3 years. We've gone through secondary investment, but $17 million and about $6.3 million just in software and maintenance costs at this point in time. So it's a considerable amount of money.
Thank you. Professor Santos, what are the chief types of cyber threats colleges and universities currently face?
Well, we face many of the issues that other places face in that we have the standard malware issues and phishing issues that we have, but the biggest issue we have is just simply the fact that it's open. Okay, the bring your own device, if you think about it, students these days, they're coming in with multiple devices. They have their tablet, they have their laptop, they have their smartphone. We always have to allow the capability for them to be able to have access to the network and to the facilities on campus, and also with visitors coming, the free flow of visitors, parents visiting, researchers coming in. We're trying to maintain a level, trying to safeguard our resources, but we're working within that context. And that creates a lot of issues. Another issue that we bring up is because we're an academic environment, we're doing research. And when we do research, we require a lot of different types of open source software that we need to use, a lot of different types of software that we're developing and that we need to test. And that creates vulnerabilities as well. And so it's a combination of having this human element of behavior that we have from the students and the faculty and the staff and visitors, as well as software development. And so that entire combination makes it very difficult.
Do you also see in higher ed the challenge of finding the appropriate staff and then the cost of
Yes.
cybersecurity?
Of course. I think that this problem is systemic across any sector at this point. Cybersecurity is an issue that everyone needs to consider. I also think that at the at universities, some of the strengths that we have is being able to try to do research in helping to understand issues that are coming to the forefront and develop new paradigms